I would like to welcome you to the June 24th, 2024 school board meeting. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And take note that we also have the new Minnesota flag over there as well. So,
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Chair Rosh, do you want to do roll call?
yes, thank you very much. Lisa, will you please call the roll?
Director Human,
Here.
Weber,
Here.
W. Felton,
Yes.
Claflin,
Here.
and Chair Rosh.
Here. Excellent.
5 present.
And at this time, I'm looking for approval of the meeting minutes and agenda for both this meeting as well as the May 28th, 2024 work session and regular meeting minutes of the June 10th work session. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Excellent. And then up first, I turn to you. What?
Need a vote?
Oh, yes, we do. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And with that, the motion carries. All right. Apparently, I was rushing to quality and action.
Makes the dream work,
Yes. But for quality and action today, I turn it over to you, Dr. Zambrino.
right? Thank you, Chair Rosh. And yeah, it's fun to be here. It's officially summer, so I'm hoping to have it feel a little more like summer on days when I'm not working, but sure feels like summer out there today. But hopefully people are able to get out and splash or whatever to stay cool. Last meeting I shared a number of highlights from the school year, which, I mean, like I said, there's just too many amazing things our staff and students did, but it's always fun to celebrate that. We did want to come back and just touch on something that's not always a fun topic, but super important and something we can be really proud of, and that's our safety and security work. So, we were just talking about me coming in a little over 2 years ago, and right when I came in, one of the first things I did is meeting with different stakeholder groups, gathering feedback and input. We started desired daily experience work that first fall with all of our staff. So we had all staff at the secondary building, had them together. We did a lot of surveys around things like our referendum, other pieces that we had gathered data on, and like over and over and over again, what was really clear is that safety was a top priority. And I think it always is. That's kind of probably a given. But I think coming off of the pandemic, especially, everybody just a little bit in that heightened state. And so when I was kind of doing an audit of where we're at, there was some really good work underway, but not necessarily a systemic and systematic approach across. And so not being able to do everything in year one, we kind of did some learning last year and put some plans into place coming into this school year. So really excited about what we did. So we put together a safety and security committee, and we were meeting weekly or monthly to kind of look at our current practices and where we wanted to go. And then we started a partnership with a really great organization called I Love You Guys. The name is actually from the founder's daughter. That was the last text she sent from school before she unfortunately met her demise at the hands of a shooter. So obviously the worst case scenario for a parent, but a wonderful story how the couple just went all in on school safety. And it's a nonprofit, so like all their materials are free. So anytime we need something, we can just go, anybody can, right? On the I Love You Guys website, click download, they have videos, all kinds of things. And so we started with what they call their standard response protocol at the beginning of the year, and then ended the year with the training around the standard reunification method. And I'll go to the next slide to just kind of talk through. So when I came in, one of the things I noticed is if the high school was in a hold, which is when you say, and the protocol is really clear. But if you look at the slide, this is exactly what you say. If you're an administrator or anybody, you get on the announcement, you say, hold, stay in your classroom or area. And then you say it again, hold, stay in your classroom or area. So it's twice, once to gather attention. Now everyone's paying attention, you repeat the direction. But a lot of times the school needs to go into a hold because someone's having a medical crisis, or, sometimes you have a kid who's just, having a breakdown and it's not safe for others. So you might put a part of the building or like a classroom or the whole building on a hold. But my first year when that would happen, people just were like coming to the school, getting their kids, and thinking it was like a major kind of lockdown type event. And so when we brought out these procedures, so the hold is where you stay in your classroom area, secure is there's something outside, you get inside, you lock the doors. Both of those you continue teaching. So like it really should feel largely normal to those who aren't necessarily dealing with what might be going on. But again, whenever the secondary building went into a hold, like people were just like panicked that something horrible was happening. And so we really did a focused effort on communication. So shout out to our principals and our communications team for helping train our students, but also staff and family. So people know like we don't need to go into panic mode. A hold is you continue business as usual other than you don't leave the space until you're told you're clear. Lockdown is like the traditional lockdown, locks lights, out of sight, take cover, there's something really bad happening. So differentiating those two, I think, brought the temperature down a lot because there's been a number of times where we've had to use hold and people kind of know, like even talking to the kids, I'm like, what do you think when you hear hold? They're like, well, somebody's having a little bit of a challenge, but we know we're okay where we are. The teacher is in the room with them. The great thing with the protocol is every teacher has their rosters with them. For if it's secondary, they have multiple rosters. Elementary, you have your rosters with you. Anytime you activate one of these, they ask teachers take attendance and mark the time. So if something could escalate, like a hold could escalate to a lockdown, we don't know. So it's, again, we don't want to conflate those two, but you just don't know what's going to happen. And so having this really strict process of taking attendance, evacuation, you can think of that like a fire or something like that. And then shelter would be like weather. And if you look at the picture, you see Chris Weinfertner with this new folder that they keep. So every teacher has the protocols posted in the room. They have that folder in the room, and inside there's a help red card or an okay green card. So what Ms. Weinfertner did, she came out, rather than the old days where the kids spilled out all over the building and we didn't necessarily know who was with whom anymore. They're told, you stay with your teacher, you stay there, and then they're checking their rosters to see, do I have everybody I think I have? And if they have just the right number, they hold up that okay card. So then if you're somebody doing the visual inspection to make sure we're safe, or that everyone is okay, you look and it's really easy to see that. If they have help, it either means they're missing somebody who they thought they should have, or they have somebody who came with them because they were in bathroom from another teacher, and then we just are able to make that connection. And so it takes a couple times of running through that to get into that, to build the muscle memory around it. But when we had an incident where the fire alarm went off and it was an actual emergency, the teachers went out, it was incredible. And Chief Wiki came up and said, wow, like I pulled up and every 20th person was somebody with the yellow folder and a card. And he didn't necessarily know what it was because he hadn't done the training with us yet. But it was just night and day difference around how it feels if we're doing a hold and if we go into these evacuation. And now, and I'll talk about the reunification method in a moment, but if we have to now leave, we now know who's with Miss Weinfertner. She can account for every kid. Because there's nothing I would want less than to tell a parent we don't know where your child is. Right. And so this gives us a really good inventory of our kids, really strict protocols for how to get in and out of the building, and of course, just a systematic approach across. So if our police are helping us at a secondary or any building, they're going to be knowing what we're doing with all this language. And we were doing great partnership with our SROs and the PD on that. So that was the standard response protocol, or SRP. Again, you'll see that in every building, every classroom. Our teachers did a fantastic job learning that, helping the kids with that. Our parents got videos and education on it.
One other piece about that photo that I really like is look at the students in that photo and how calm they are. There is no panic. There is no disorder. Like, they're on their phones. It's another day. Like, they're just like interacting. Like, I appreciate that lowering of the temperature.
The temperature came down a lot. Yes. So really great work that people did there. But then, that's the immediate response. Sometimes something may require us to reunify kids with their parents, and it could happen at the site or it could happen off-site. And I know Director Felton mentioned, she shared my highlight at the foundation meeting because I couldn't be there with our policy committee going on. But one of the questions I had is, why is the location in Inver Grove versus in South St. Paul? We are really lucky. We were able to get the Veterans Memorial Community Center and the Army National Guard to sign an MOU with us to allow us to come anytime we would have a major emergency to use their facility. It's a great location because it's just off of 52, so it's super easy to get to. Tons of parking within the facility. On the right side, which would be the west side, there's a gym that has a kitchen, there's bathrooms, it's a great space. If we needed to bus kids, we could bus them right into the back, bring them in the back. So it's a really good, safe space to have the kids be, and to have a really orderly process for parents to come and pick them up. So that's why it's in Inver Grove Heights, not here, because if something horrible, God forbid, happened, you don't want to be right in the space where that happened. You do need some distance. And also, frankly, we didn't really have a great space like that within South St. Paul. So we're really excited about that. Mark Fenton and our SROs worked on that, and Lisa from Comms to help us get this partnership in place. And so then what we did is on June 11th, we brought teams from each of our sites in the district. So we had about 70 of us, inclusive of our SROs. Chief Wiki couldn't attend because that was the day of the service for the Minneapolis officer, but Commander Running, Commander Salmi came, and then a number of Chief Jelfs and some staff from South Metro Fire came. So all of our building clerical, our security staff, all of our administrators, counselors, social workers, psychs, everyone was invited, and it was all hands on deck training on this method, which allows us to really, again, we take that inventory to the kids in a really orderly process for kids to be returned to their families. And so what you see here is the teams practicing, and they have the different color smocks for different roles. So someone might be a greeter. I'm here to get my son Leo. What's your name? Checking ID to make sure I am who I say I am. Checking in the computer to make sure that that's the proper adult. And even when the kids are out of sight, so that parents don't go right to the kids, it just keeps it calmer. But then we can bring the kid, and even as you're bringing the kid, you're like, is this the person you want to go home with? So it's like super tight, super safe, and then we have a really accurate record of where we would be. Not gonna lie, pretty cool to have the National Guard right there. They said they would drop everything and help us as well. And so for those who don't know, there's like Hummers and stuff back behind there. So I'm like, feels like a pretty secure space if we ever had to bring the kids. So what I keep saying is, I wanted to have this and never need it. But before we didn't have it. And so now we were able to train that. So now this isn't something we would run through with the kids, because the kids will get direction at the time. So this one doesn't require that level of communication, but it would be something that if we had to make sure parents knew, and we'd work with transportation and others to get our kids to that space, reunify with families, and then if we needed to bus some kids home later, it's something a lot of districts have gone through, and like I said, I hope we never need it, but we definitely have it. So again, really great work with I Love You guys there. So some next steps, the best way to prevent things is through relationships. So a lot of times people would ask me about school safety when I was a principal, and I will say the number one thing we can do to have a safe school or safe environment is to have relationships. Because as a principal, I can't tell you how many times somebody would tell me or another trusted adult something that they thought wasn't right. And so that's why we need to do some of the prevention work, which teaching kids about healthy choices, promoting safety and well-being, but also building relationship. We also launched the Help Me app, which we've shared before, but that's an anonymous app. You can choose to put your information in, but if you want to remain anonymous, you can. But if somebody says, I think someone has a weapon or something like that, they can report that anonymously, and that comes right to the staff. So it's assigned to building administrators as well as myself and Dr. Burkhart. And they also have resources and things available for families on that app, but we're hoping that could be a good proactive tool. So that we can head off some of the challenges that just bubble up when we don't know what's going on. But again, relationships above all else. So that's the kind of prevention side, helping kids make those healthy choices. Then there's what we call postvention, which is the supports after. So I should say Dr. Burkhart did a lot of work with our social work, psych, counseling team this year to work on clarity around like threat assessments and risk assessments. Sometimes kids are frustrated and they use big words. Is that what they did, or is there a real threat behind that? And there's a very specific process, protocols of best practices to follow through. So Dr. Burkhart worked hard with the team on that. And then now we're looking at like the postvention work. Again, if something happens, how are we supporting our students, staff, and families after a crisis situation? And then we'll continue in the cycle of the annual training for students and staff so they know the protocols and are, again, comfortable and familiar with it. I think it'll be a breeze because already when I see, like we saw the picture, like you said, Chair Rosh, the temperature, just you can see it. And as the kids get used to that more and more at elementary into our middle and high school grades, the kids are always the easiest part because they're so resilient, and our kids are the best. So anyway, really excited and proud of that work, but more work to do in that regard. Happy to answer any questions about that or where we're headed.
I'm just also excited to see, like, prior, anytime there was an incident in the school that required a lockdown, a hold, there was, at one point some confusion about what was what. And inside of our community, rightly so, it is something that is every parent's worst fear or anxiety, and having some clarity on what we can do with this, because like a hold is a really useful tool and rarely actually a crisis.
Right.
And the fact that we've got some clarity on this and have this in our tool set, I think is really remarkable.
I also just like the fact that things are clear and they're posted. So if you were a substitute teacher, or if you were, someone who's not normally in the building, you would know kind of what was going on. Also, I know we had the time when, I think the building was having an incident and people didn't know if they should evacuate or if they should shelter in place. And there was some confusion about, what's the protocol. What's the protocol there? And I'm also just extremely thankful to you, to Inver Grove Heights, to the National Guard, because obviously if an incident happens, you need to get away from the site and be able to have a plan for unification. So I remember after another school incident, calling and saying, what's the plan? Obviously we don't want to use it, but what is the plan? And to now know that we have those steps and those plans, it's just, I think people can just rest a lot easier knowing that challenges in our environment will never go away, but that if we have a plan to deal with them, that everyone can at least feel a little bit better about what tomorrow could bring. So I would just like to applaud you for that.
It's a team effort. I was kind of joking a minute ago, but teamwork does make the dream work, and it is a team effort. So I am so thankful for, like I said, our building leaders, our teachers, everyone who took that worked hard. And you saw that. I think some of what I like with I Love You Guys is they've been doing it for a while, and they reflected, we used to have different types of lockdowns, and that was one of the main sources of confusion. I think that's part of why Hold was still carrying that confusion, because I know when I was a principal, I was trained on there's a code yellow lockdown and there's a code red lockdown and a soft lockdown. There was all these different things, and I was sitting in my office one day, and one of my custodial staff, he came running in my office. He said, the police just chased the person who was fleeing them into the building. And I got on the PA system and I said, we're in a lockdown. Didn't have time to think, is this a code red or a code yellow? So it's this is the pragmatic, if you know you need to go in a lockdown, there's no other word for it, it's lockdown. Take shelter, be safe. But it clarifies a lot of those pieces over time. So, and again, a great organization, the nonprofit, and those pieces. So yeah, excited about that. Something else we're excited about is work we've been doing in partnership with our city. So excited to share this as well. So you get a 2-for-1. Quality in action here tonight, but we've been talking about this a little bit. Excited to really bring it out this week, front and center in front of our amazing community at Kaposia Day. So, another thing I had heard coming in was, that there's just an ebb and flow, and it's natural when you have elected officials and different superintendents over time about the relationship between the city and the school district. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. We're a special district. It's one and the same. We got to be lockstep tight. And so was really excited when I reached out to Mayor Francis and our city manager, Ryan Garcia, to say, hey, do you want to check with the council? And I talked to you all as a board. Would people be interested in coming forward and putting together a set of common core values? And everyone was really excited about it. And it took us, a little bit of time to kind of find our way with it. We started the work back in September, but we really want these to serve as a foundational set of core values that reflects the aspiration and priorities and our shared vision for our community. And so for those who hadn't heard that yet, the city and the school board have been working in collaboration and came up with a really great set of core values. So the first one being pride. Of course, we have to have pride in South St. Paul. But I love that there was so much talk about how do we make pride inclusive, because we know there's a rich history, but we also know the community's changed over time. So, respecting the old history, the traditions, but also collectively building new traditions, especially as the face of the city changes. Respect, just celebrating the goodness in oneself and others. I think One of the things that we learned in the pandemic is we need to give each other a little grace, and I think that's another way of saying let's just be respectful to one another, knowing that everybody's doing their best. Equity was another one, so stating that as that we want a supportive environment that provides opportunities for all to be seen, heard, and valued. That was the same language we heard in the desired daily experience, that people want to feel seen and heard for who they are and valued for who they are, and so that showed up there. Resilience, of course, a town like this couldn't be where it is if it weren't for the resilience in the community. So, but here again, adapting, changing, and persevering when challenges come our way. So that fits great for the city and the district. Integrity, being thoughtful, honest, and transparent in our words and actions, and then accountable for our decisions. That was really strong with both the board and the city council. And then I think this last one just is so fitting, collaboration, working together. And so we'll be out at Kaposia Days sharing some of this information. We've got some neat little handouts that we'll give you, bracelets and things like that for those who want to sign on for that. But our goal is to build the South St. Paul where everybody wants to be, to live, work, play, and grow together. And so really excited. We had a great meeting, our last meeting with the city council, where there's just a lot of enthusiasm for this shared work. And so we'll be at the Kaposia Days right in parade right back to back with our city council, which is going to be really fun. And then we're going to look to how do we sustain this. So one of our goals is to think about who out in the community is exemplifying one of these values and how do we elevate that. Thinking, Tommy at the Crow or Karen at the Cooper, whomever, right? The people who are giving back, the foundation. There's so many people who live these values. And so we'll find really fun ways to celebrate these values as we move forward. Just really excited about it. We should have seen some of this in our 6 times as well as some of our other pathways. There's just, again, really fun to end the year and go, wow, we did a lot of great things. Even though there's bumps along the way, lots of great work done by our staff, students, families, and then, of course, this broader collaboration with the community.
Just super excited.
Yeah, we got our shirts ready, right? Hot off the presses. City Council's just getting theirs now, so we got our shirts going, and we'll have some swag. And
What I think was incredibly fun is, so at the last meeting, City Council had a very busy night. They did ribbon cuttings. They did their meeting. They also joined us. So, they kept their legs moving all of that night, making their way through. But I really reflected on that meeting, seeing the products of the work that we had, because the very first time we met together, I don't think we had an end goal totally in mind, and not everyone on the school board knows everyone on the city council, and in a lot of ways we were strangers as we sort of joined in that room, made some new friends and some new partnerships, and it's really great to see this growing and kind of building on itself as we kind of proceed forward. So.
yeah, it's exciting.
Excellent. Well, thank you. 2 quality interactions tonight. Up next, we have a couple other reports. So we stakeholder comments and submissions to the board. We had one submission in person last week, concern about access to some spaces for staff members. And I think there's been a little bit of follow-up with that. There was one submission online as well, just looking for a little bit of further clarity and insight on an issue inside of our school. If you ever want to make comment to the board, at 6:30 at our first meeting of the month is held at district office, and you are welcome to come and address the board with any comments or concerns. There's also a form on the website that people can use. And then next, I will return to Vice Chair Ann Claflin to highlight some of our elements from our work session.
Thank you. Most of what we had done at our last work session has already been discussed. Having the City Council come and join us to discuss our plans with these core values was a great opportunity for us to get together and get to know each other a bit more. And you'll see more of that rolling out. There was an article in the local paper as well. We also had a lot of information given to us by Dr. Burkhart about some updates to the student handbook, making sure that that is up to date and meets our values of equity and inclusivity, and clarifies a lot of the rights and responsibilities that our students have. We'll be hearing more about that later this evening. We finalized our budgets for the upcoming year, and we'll have that presentation later tonight as well. And then at our work session just previous to this, we mostly talked about other public relations events that we have going on around the community, all the other committees that we are part of, and how we are out representing the school board in our communities. Yeah, for being so busy, we'll hear a lot of the results of all of our work later in the agenda.
Excellent. Thank you. And turning back to Dr. Zambrino, some highlights from around the district. All the end of the year stuff, I'd imagine.
Right? Thank you. Well, we shared this before, but want to make sure everyone is aware. We do have some summer meal opportunities. So we're partnering with Open Door to serve students in the community free meals in designated spots around the city. And you can go to our website to find out more. I know they've done things like when the weather's nice, putting out a blanket and inviting people to come for a picnic, things like that. At our sites that are open, we have the free breakfast and lunch for anyone 18 and under. So that's at Kaposian, the secondary, where we have our summer programming. But again, all opportunities are listed on our website, so we know that sometimes food is a need for families. So we are appreciative to partner in this work. I know I've shared before, I love that I donate to Second Harvest, and a lot of the food goes right through Central Square. So it's really fun to see that connection with where you're donating to and getting to the right people in our community. Also want to make sure folks know this summer we're trying something new. We're going to do our enrollment center at Central Square Community Center. So the hope is to be a one-stop shop for any new to district families or anyone needing assistance with enrollment. And then we have our support there for interpreting services while it's open. So that's 7:30 to 4:30. However, anyone can pop in anytime Central Square is open to get the information if they want to get moving on enrollment. So don't want people to feel like they're limited to that time, but that's when we're staffed to make sure we have interpreting available. And then more information on our website at the enroll section of our website. And then I mentioned it before, the Summer 6 Times was mailed out last week, and man, that looks fantastic. So shout out to our comms team, Lisa and Danette, for your work on that. We talked a lot about the Packer Pathways. So excited. That was a little challenging in the sense that it was kind of wrapping up right as we were wrapping up. So we'll kick off with that as well next year at the start of the year. Some great work going on around really developing pathways that are responsive again to the feedback and surveys we've gotten, information we've gotten through our surveys. The Help Me app was highlighted in there. We talked about that earlier. And then just lots of programming opportunities through community ed at Central Square. We do take great pride in serving our community from birth through whenever they decide to be done with South St. Paul. And sometimes they're with us for a long time. I know we just talked about the senior center social and the ice cream social. So a lot of people at that community center as well. So hope that people know we take it very seriously and we take great pride in serving everyone in our community. And then, yes, end of year, you mentioned there, Chair Ash. Congratulations to our class of 2024. I mean, what a great night we had. Other than the wind, and I cannot remember what the red, white, and blue things are called that hang on the bleachers there. But that aside, what a beautiful night we had. And a really special group for me because as I came in and did some of the entry work, these are some of the kids that I got to know right away. So it was all the graduations are beautiful and they're all fun, but it was really fun to see some of the kids that I've gotten to know. So a little selfish in that, but I can only imagine what that feels like for families and teachers and people who've been there with these kids all along. So shout out to 2024. Make sure you stay in touch and don't forget us. You never forget your roots. You got to come back and pay it forward here to us as well. So keep that tradition rich. Summer Learning Academy, like I said, we were offering meals where those are happening, but we got a lot of kids in the building. Still, it's fun to be in the schools and still see the learning happening. So elementary began last week, and the students there are going into 1st through 5th grade. And it was really neat on the first day. I mean, the kids were only apart from each other for a week, and they were all like seeking each other out in the cafeteria to give each other hugs and welcome each other. So that was really fun for me to just watch that happen. But the kids get a free breakfast and lunch and have a lot of fun activities. There is no class during the week of the 4th, though, so just make sure that people know we do want our staff to get a little break in there and celebrate the 4th of July with family and friends. And then we have the Packer preview. There's one session going now, and there is still room for the next session, which starts July 8th. That is for incoming 6th graders. So if you are transitioning over to the secondary building, the Packer preview helps kids. We talked about navigating those locks in the lockers, learning how to read their schedule, and just switching classes and getting a feel for that. I know, having been a middle school principal for 8 years, I often ask the incoming folks, like, who's more nervous? Is it mom and dad or family, or is it the kid? Usually it was the parents, but the kids have a little nerves too. I think this is good for both groups because parents can kind of know your kids get a chance to get into the building and learn the lay of the land, and of course for the kids to get into the school is a great, start. And then middle school summer learning, that's for our students going into grade 7th and 8th grade. So last grade 6th and 7th and 8th grade next year. They're doing a lot of hands-on fun learning. Again, they get fed, so that's great. And then they're going to end the trip, or end the session with a trip to Valley Fair. So I might have to reach out and see if they need any chaperones for that event, or maybe Mrs. Winter needs to go to that one since, she actually worked there. So she's got a special place in her heart for Valley Fair. She gets very excited about that. So maybe I'll give my spot up and let her take that one. But space still open for that as well. So if you're interested, check out our website and you can enroll there. Again, no learning happening the week of the 4th. So want to, again, give people a chance to celebrate with family and friends. The 4th and 5th are district holidays, so the buildings are actually officially closed for those no matter what. I mentioned it before, July 8th is the second session of Packer Preview. So if you haven't signed up for those incoming 6th graders, get that going. And then the middle school summer learning begins with the 7th and 8th graders. And then we're doing some cleaning. We've got to do that work over the summer. So Central Square does take a pause, seldom, but this is one, the July 8th to 13th, to make sure that that building stays in the tip-top shape that our community deserves. As always, you can track us online and keep up with our board and all the great things going on there. Our team does again, a fantastic job. I think our website looks as good as anybody's. I haven't gone on to any school website yet where I've thought, we need to do that.
One of the things that I think is really special about our graduation is you go to a lot of other high school graduations. It's a really informal ceremony. It's held off-site. It's somewhere else. We graduate our students here at home. Mm-hmm. And when you watch them walk across the road and then enter the stadium and surrounded by the community that they grew up in, I think is a pretty special moment. That's a good tail end of the year.
It's incredible.
All right. Up next, we have our consent agenda items, which are financial claims and staffing and personnel in nature, and have been a part of the board packet, and they have been presented and discussed with the board already. Do I have a motion to approve our consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With that, the motion carries. Tonight, we have a whole host of policies that are up for their second of 3 readings. It is Policy 506, Student Discipline, 507, Corporal Punishment and Prone Restraint, 605, Alternative Programs, 607, Organization of Grade Levels, and 610, Field Trips, and 507.5, School Resource Officers. These will be available for 3 readings but prior to board approval. And it is the product of our policy committee's work so far. After that, we have our business items, and buckle up. We have a whole bunch of business items up for tonight. Up first, I am looking for approval for the South St. Paul School Board to approve the 2024-25 resolution for membership to the Minnesota State High School League. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And for discussion, I'm going to turn over to Brady Kruger.
Hi there. Thanks for having me here. That one's pretty easy. That's an annual resolution that is required. Essentially, all you're doing is that you're agreeing to be a part of the Minnesota State High School League and abide by the Minnesota State High School League rules, laws, handbook, policies, and so on, which you probably aren't very familiar with, but that's something that I live in and deal with.
That's why we have Brady.
Yes, that is your space. Are there any changes in terms of where we sit with other schools or anything else this year? Have they determined that yet?
Like in terms of like section placement
Yeah,
and so on?
sections.
No, that's a 2-year thing, so that'll be next year that we'll have additional section placement based on
Excellent.
our enrollment numbers.
Thank you so much. All right. As this is a resolution, Lisa, will you call a roll vote?
Director Weber,
Yes.
W. Felton,
Yes.
Claflin,
Yes.
Human,
Yes.
and Chair Rush.
Yes.
That's 5 yeas.
Motion passes. Stick around, Brady, because up next, we are looking for approval for the South St. Paul School Board to approve the girls swimming cooperative agreement with Minnehaha Academy and Cristo Ray beginning for the 24-25 school year. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
And for discussion, I turn it back to you, Brady.
Again, as I mentioned at a previous work session, our swim program on the girls' side and on the boys' side, we're just at a point now with numbers that we're not able to sustain our own program. So I reached out to some schools in the area. Minnehaha Academy responded. Several other schools responded, but as we kind of went through that process of, is it going to work for us in terms of numbers? Because depending on the number of students that you have, number of schools, that could bump up your classification. So we were trying to find and like thread that needle to find a school that had an appropriate size numbers, but also allowed us to stay in an appropriate classification. And that's why we landed with Minnehaha Academy and Cristo Ray. This would be a 2-year agreement that would come back to the board for, I guess, a approval, a review, just to see how the process is working. Ideally, I hope it's a short-term solution to our current numbers problem, but if it needs to be extended longer, I think this gives us a opportunity to have a solid partner school. We do work with Minnehaha Academy on our boys lacrosse side as well, so there is some familiarity there with working with those 2 schools. And then there are, I know this is not necessarily for formal approval, but as we've been moving forward, there probably will be some more discussions about cooperatives coming before the board. We talked about boys swimming. That's another program that's in need. We also talked about at the work session, we have some families of South St. Paul students that don't necessarily attend school in South St. Paul, but are seeking to participate in athletics here. And so those will probably be coming before the board here shortly, maybe August, September, somewhere around there.
Excellent.
And then, obviously, if other sports get into this situation, we will be looking at that. Co-ops, again, provide us an opportunity to continue to offer programs for all of our students to be able to compete in education-based athletics and activities.
Excellent. Any discussion or further questions?
You did get like a formal packet, so you basically see the whole application for you. So it's a pretty exhaustive process.
Yes.
That requires approval from multiple different people before it comes to you.
Excellent. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With that, the motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
You too. All right. Up next, we are looking for approval for the South St. Paul School Board to approve the 24-25 student teaching agreement between Bemidji State University and South St. Paul Schools. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
And for discussion, I turn that over to Joel Miltier.
Good evening. A student-teacher placement has been coordinated with Bemidji State University and South St. Paul beginning September of 2024. To finalize the student-teacher placement, approval of the agreement between Bemidji State University and South St. Paul Schools is necessary. This agreement and placement aligns with South St. Paul Schools student teaching policy number 437.
Excellent. Any further discussion or questions?
What subject is it?
I do not know the subject as of right now. No.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With that, the motion carries. All right. And up next, we are looking for approval for the South St. Paul School Board to approve the independent contract agreement for the time period of July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
And for discussion, I come back to Joel Miltier.
Thank you very much. Administration recommends the following changes for independent employee agreements for the 24-25 school year that are all within the parameters established by the school board. Independent employees include staff in the following employee groups: administrators, coordinators, administrative support, district support, technology, student support, nutrition services, and part-time custodial. The components of the agreement have been provided to the school board. The independent group agreements include a base salary increase of 4% for all independent employee groups, market adjustments for the nutrition services assistant position and 2 director positions, and the addition of a step to the nutrition services assistant position to align wages with median market salaries, adjustments to the vacation accrual and longevity structures, allowance for vacation and personal leave sellback, adjustment to the 403B matching contribution structure, and an increase to the administrator insurance contribution to better align with other leadership positions. Language changes including alignment of holidays with board-approved district holidays and various title changes. These recommended changes are all within the salary and benefit parameters established by the school board.
Excellent. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? That the motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Joel. And next, we are looking for approval for the South St. Paul School Board to approve the 24-25 Students' Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to amend the section with regard of the 2024-25 Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. The failure to follow instructions should be a level 2 category thing. It was missing which category it fell under.
Excellent.
Second.
Otherwise, yes.
And for discussion, I'll turn that over to Candace.
Great. Yeah, so in front of you is the new Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook for 24-25. So district and building administrators have undertaken a comprehensive process to update that handbook in light of recent legislative changes and new non-exclusionary discipline practices in the state. The process involved a discipline self-inventory, reviewing discipline definitions from the Minnesota Department of Education, and really streamlining the handbook to make it more user-friendly for students, families, and our staff. Some of the other key updates included a reemphasis on our core values, new level discipline system, adding some specific infractions around dangerous weapons, physical aggression, and ensuring that all of our other sections were updated to meet statutory compliance.
Excellent. Any other discussion?
Just thank you for putting in the work and kind of overhauling it and making it up to standard that we want. I think a lot of effort went into it. I read all of it.
And I think all of our emphasis around safety and our procedures, I think we're really building a very strong structure for us going forward. Excellent.
And more to come.
With the applied motion made by Kim Human, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With that, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we are looking for approval for the South St. Paul School Board to approve the resolution establishing dates for filing affidavits of candidacy. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And this is something that fulfills, for discussion, this fulfills our ability to kind of carry on with our election. We will have 3 available seats that are up for election at our candidacy, and the opening day is July 30th.
July 30th to August 13th. Candidates will file down at City Hall with the city clerk down there, and we have all the information on our website, on the school board's page of our website.
And also want to thank you for your work, as those who file candidacy will also get a packet of information about the process of serving on the board and what that would look like, and when they file their affidavit and their $2 filing fee as they sort of carry on. As this is a resolution, Lisa, will you please call a roll call vote?
Director W. Felton,
Yes.
Claflin,
Yes.
Human,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Chair Rush.
Yes.
That's 5 yeas.
Motion passes. Thank you. Up next, we are looking for approval for the South St. Paul School Board to approve a gifts report. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
And for discussion, I'll turn that over to Brady Hoffman.
Good evening. We have several donations on this evening's agenda for the school board to accept. We have donations from Binder Heating and Air Conditioning and the Boulevard Tavern for the all-night senior party, Gloria Auto Sales for the CDLU Affinity Group, Hrvatski Dom Charities for Kaposia Education Center and the South St. Paul Secondary all-night senior party. IAFF Local 724 made a donation for the all-night senior party. The Kaposia PTA made donations for the 5th grade party as well as the Ninja Warrior program. KRB Services, A&A Auto Care for the all-night senior party. Mauer Chev for the all-night senior party. The South St. Paul Education Foundation for Deb Burrell's clay program. And then the South St. Paul Open Foundation made donations for the baseball and track and field coaching salaries. So quite a few rolling through this month.
That's an incredible amount of support from our community. All right.
I was like, that must have been some party.
And it was all night for the seniors. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With that, the motion carries.
Thank you to them.
Yes, and thank you to all who continually support our students over and over and over again is really remarkable. Up next, we are looking for approval for the South St. Paul School Board to approve the long-term facilities maintenance for the South St. Paul Public Schools. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
And for discussion, Brady Hoffman has stayed in place.
Good evening. So the long-term facility maintenance funding is a revenue stream that school districts can access to help take care of some of the deferred maintenance needs and repairs and maintenance on our buildings. In order to access this funding, the school board does need to approve a 10-year revenue projection and expenditure plan as scripted by MDE, and then there's also a statement of assurances that we sign off on saying we're going to follow the rules and guidelines related to this funding. So in the board packet is that 10-year projection. It is a big spreadsheet that's MDE templated, but it does trend out based on our enrollment and our building age what that revenue looks like for the district. So right now we're a little over $1 million a year for LTFM funding. With declining enrollment, it is projected to get a little bit under $1 million, but it is an aid levy combination. So some state aid as well as some levy dollars flow through with this. And then also included is that 10-year projection of our how we kind of intend to spend those deferred maintenance dollars. So in order to access this and get it under the levy this fall, the school board does need to approve this, and then we have to submit all these documents to MDE by the end of July. So I can open it up for any questions or turn it over to you for approval.
Looks like no discussions.
And this is something that's done annually. It's
Yep.
it's not new. It's an annual recurring piece, and we did review this at the committee of the whole earlier this month as well.
Yes, and we're spending a lot of time sort of talking about our facility needs and in that place, and that's a source of discussion that is an ongoing thing that we are all working through and engaging with our community, with our facilities committee that is meeting as well. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With that, the motion carries. Stick around, Brady, because up next, this is the big one. We are looking for approval for the South St. Paul School Board to approve the FY25 budget. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And for discussion, I come back to Brady Hoffman.
Good evening once again. So we are at the point in the year where a lot of work has gone into developing the FY24-25 budget. So we're at that point of presenting to the school board for formal adoption. This does need to be adopted by the end of June to allow us to have an operating budget to work within next year. I do have a PowerPoint I was going to run through quick. But yeah, this process starts back in the fall, and we'll touch on that here. But in January, we initially meet with the school board and walk through kind of high-level projections and get the school board's input on kind of areas of focus or things to prioritize. So we use that as our starting point as we move along. So jumping into the process. So we have 4 main funds that we have a budget for. So we have our general fund, which is like our main operating checkbook of the district. We have our food service fund, which accounts for our breakfast and lunch and after-school snack programming. We have our community service fund, which is all of our early learning before after-school enrichment activities, as well as our senior programming. And then we have our debt service fund, which is to account for levy dollars to pay debt that's outstanding. So it's really levy dollars in, debt payments out. So it's a pretty small amount of transactions there. So with the process, we build up some budget projections back in the fall, and then we review that with the board in the January-February timeframe. Administration works on developing recommendations in February, March. We review those initial adjustments with the school board in the March-April window. And then as finance staff, we really dig in and make sure that all these details come together as we're expecting and anticipating, which then brings us to June, where we went through this at the work session at the beginning of the month. And then now it's, there have been no changes since then, but now it's the formal 24-25 budget presentation. Overall assumptions that we're working within for revenue, so within the general fund, the basic formula allowance, so that's a little over half of our revenue, is an increase of 2% over last year. So this is known, this was already established by the state that this is what our funding increase would be. As we project out into the future as well, the state did attach the general formula to inflation in the last legislative session a year ago, where they did put in a floor and a cap. So at a minimum, the funding formula will go up 2%, but up to 3% depending on where inflation comes in. So that's for FY26. So that's something that's been advocated for a while to help offset those growing inflationary expenses. COVID relief funding was funding made available with COVID-19, and this past school year is the last year that that funding was available to us. So that's been a significant piece of funding that we've been leveraging over time. So when we do look at the budget, that is the big reason why our revenue is going down. We have declining enrollment as well as this COVID relief funding expiring. Enrollment is the main driver of district revenues, so most funding streams are based on the number of students or pupils served. Each student generates a little over $10,000 in revenue. And this declining, we've been experiencing declining enrollment for several years, and it is expected to continue here for several more, mainly due to declining birth rates. The state has provided significant funding in FY24, so last year we did receive a 4% increase. While we're grateful for that, that still is not enough to continue to keep pace with inflation and sustain some of the pieces within the requirements that comes from the state. If we shift over to expenses, on the expenditure side, salaries and benefits, which is the biggest piece of our budget, we factor in all of the known contract settlements. So when we our contracts are on different cycles, so some of our employee contracts aren't known at this time. We're negotiating them now or in the near future. So we only use estimates for those contracts where it's not known. We kind of project out what a parameter to work within, as well as, like I said, all the contracts that are settled, we build in those changes. We also incorporate any changes to any benefits as well if we know that there's some benefit rate changes. Class size norms have remained unchanged from the 23-24 school year. And then for our non-salary items, a lot of them are held constant to the extent possible. But there are things like transportation, utilities, things that we just can't control the market on, so we do build in some market inflation adjustments there. There are a couple variables that we don't have accounted for in the budget because I don't typically like to recommend putting them in until we have all the details around them, and two of those are related to the READ Act. So there is language and dollars attached to curriculum and material reimbursement, around $39.94 per student, or about $116,000 for us. So this will go to offset the cost of the Wit and Wisdom curriculum. We're still waiting on the full timeline and process of when these dollars will be made available to us and what that reimbursement process looks like. So that would be additional funding coming in that's not yet accounted for in this budget. Then there's also some professional development teacher compensation dollars, 3606 a pupil, or about $105,000 for South St. Paul. There may be additional costs associated with these, so if we build in this revenue, there may be costs to come as well. So these two pieces will most likely come through in that fall revision timeframe as we know more information. Looking at our enrollment projection, we have several years of information here, so those solid bars are actual enrollment results that we've had. The grayed out column is the 23-24 budget numbers, so the year that just ended. We don't have those actual numbers yet. And then that steps into the projection where we see from the 23-24 budget to the 24-25 adoption, we have a drop from 2836 down to 2699. And as you can see, that continues to decline year over year. And the biggest piece of this is the declining enrollment. So we're graduating more seniors every year than we have incoming kindergartners that next year. So it becomes a natural step down in our enrollment. So this is a piece we're continuing to just prepare for and plan for strategically so we can do the best we can with the resources we have to serve our students. Once the revenues are in, expenses are in, what's left over is called fund balance. So typically we like to have positive fund balance, which we do here, which is great. So fund balance is that a total accumulation of the operating surpluses and deficits since the district was formed many years ago. That fund balance gets broken down into a few different categories. So there's some restricted fund balance components, and those are restricted by external entities. So the state will restrict some of those dollars, like LTFM, which we just heard about. Staff development, operating capital, pieces like that have specific uses that we can't change how we use those resources. There's assigned fund balance, which is internally imposed constraints. So dollars have been earmarked for certain pieces or certain projects or certain initiatives we have going on. And then what's left over is unassigned, which is anything remaining. The school board policy around fund balance is for a minimum unassigned fund balance of 8% of our annual budget. When we look at our fund balance projection, or our general fund revenue expense budget projection, the center column there in the middle is the projected budget for 24-25. This walkthrough starts with where we ended 22-23, what our budget revision or our revised budget was for the year that just ended, 23-24, and then it moves forward. So we're projected to start this year with the unassigned fund balance of 15.5%. The current budget being proposed is pretty much break even with a surplus of $16,133. So there's total revenues of just under 51 million and total expenses just under 51 million. Looking at the graphic, you can see how our revenues did drop from 53 million 161 down to 50 million 967. So big chunk of that is enrollment decline. The other big chunk is those federal COVID dollars that have expired that are no longer part of that budget. So at the end of the day for FY 24-25, we're maintaining a pretty much a balanced budget with an unassigned fund balance of 15.5%. When we look at the projection of the future years, the biggest thing here is the declining enrollment coming into play. So that's where you can see those deficits show up. So those are all things that as we work through every budget process, we figure out how to best navigate those deficits. It's not saying any decisions are made. It's just we do nothing, here's what happens. So this is just the reality of what declining enrollment looks like for a school district. And this isn't unique to South St. Paul. This is statewide. Projections are looking like this. When we look at the breakdown of the fund balances, our unassigned fund balance is that top row. So that's where that does grow slightly to 7.9 million. That's that 15.5%. Then you can see we have our assigned fund balance and then all of our restricted categories. So ranging from, like I mentioned before, you've got LTFM and operating capital on there. We have gifted and talented. We have some staff development, safe school dollars as well. So all of these are those restricted components that we are strategically spending down and utilizing for within those specific purposes. Looking at where our revenues come from, I mentioned earlier that the general state aid is a little over half our revenue, so 55% of our revenues come from the state in that general category. The next largest bucket is our local taxes, and then followed by that is our categorical state aids. So categorical state aids are things like special education dollars, compensatory dollars, state aids that have a specific funding source, funding used to them. And then we end up with just 2% for federal and 2% for local revenues. If you looked at this slide a year ago, that federal bucket was at 6%. And just in the way that COVID money went away, it went from 6 to 2. So the 2 is more normal with what we saw pre-COVID. So this is very similar to the same breakdown we had previously. On where our dollars go, the largest piece of the pie is salaries and benefits. So 80% of the dollars that we spend go towards paying for our people and the related benefits. The next largest group is purchase services, and within that, the biggest piece is transportation. We also have repairs and maintenance and some other professional fees that we have to follow through on, but transportation is that biggest bucket within there. And after those two buckets, we're really left with 4% for capital and 3% for supplies and materials. So like I said, 80% is our people, and that's the biggest piece of our budget. Shifting over to Fund 2, our child nutrition or our nutrition services program. We once again have the free school meals for kids that the state's going to continue to provide reimbursement for breakfast and lunch in the future. How that works is it's a combination of state aid and federal funding depending on how students qualify for those free or reduced meals. So what those rates are for FY25 aren't known yet, so we built this budget based on those rates for FY24. We did factor in declining enrollment in that meal served projection to take that into consideration. On the expense side, there's the impacts of inflation. Food costs continue to rise. And then as we heard, we do have some wages that are lagging the market, so we're trying to make some adjustments there. The other piece that we are doing as well, and we'll see this slide later, but our fund balance is pretty healthy in food service, and it's something that if that gets too large, there's a limit to how much we can technically carry with MDE, so we're actually strategically spending some of that down on redoing some of the serving lines at the secondary building. So there's a deficit spend that's strategic in that way that you'll see later. For the community education fund, we do have a lot of those programs are fee-based, so there are some routine adjustments to those fees for fee-based programs. The biggest thing you'll see that creates a deficit within the community ed budget is related to the school age care disabled levy. So during COVID, let me take a step back. This is a revenue stream where the way the levy processes works, we levy like a year and a half before we actually start incurring those costs. So we're levying based on what we anticipate spending. We get the revenue, and then it gets trued up at the end. Did you spend everything you expected or not? So whenever we made projections and levies, we got the revenue. COVID happened, the programming didn't happen. So we brought in the revenue, didn't have any expense. So then what the levy process does is it takes that away from the district in the levy process and gives it back to the taxpayers. So there is a negative levy adjustment coming through for FY25 as a result of that. For FY24, MD did a waiver and let districts retain those dollars to help grow out of COVID. And then we have a negative adjustment of about $135,000 coming through. So we received the revenue in the past basically, so we're not levying the taxpayers again. So the levy for the taxpayers goes down. And we're anticipating another negative levy adjustment for FY26 of about $71,000. So you'll see that shows the deficit spend down, but in reality, the deficit spending is those dollars were already sitting in our fund balance. So we already have those in hand to give back. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
This is one of those where we live in like multiple years, and it's kind of fun. Looking at our debt service programming, or fund, this is once again where there are rules and requirements around it. So whenever we have outstanding debt, we are required to levy 105% of what those principal and interest payments are. And this is in the event that there's delinquent tax collections, we still collect enough to be good on our debt payments. Whenever we have high collection rates, which we have, that debt service fund balance grows. There's a calculation within the levy process that if that fund balance gets too large, they actually do a debt excess reduction, and it becomes a negative in our levy to basically give the dollars back to the taxpayers again through the levy process. So whenever we see this budget, we'll see there isn't the 5% surplus because we've had good collections in the past, so we're basically break even with the debt service fund. So on our next summary, so here's that same fund balance summary, but now we factor in those different funds. So the second row there, food service, has just over $2 million of revenues projected and then $2.3 million of expense, so a deficit spend down of $238,000. That does bring the fund balance down to $538,000, which is within the acceptable limits at MDE. Within community education, we have a deficit spend of $139,000, and that's where $135,000 of that is related to that negative levy adjustment. So we're working within those funding streams there. And then debt services basically break even because the amount of fund balance we have covers that 5% requirement within that levy process. So across all funds, we have total revenues of $58.3 million compared to expenses of $58.6. So overall, a slight deficit, but that's all intentional within the fund balance we have and the use of those funds. So that walks through the proposed budget for FY24-25. I will open it up for any questions or turn it over to the school board to consider for approval.
For those who don't know, we have seen this presentation 3-4 times or so. And so we're excited and in the spirit of transparency, happy to present it to everyone who will watch this live stream. But none of these numbers are a surprise to us, and would also like to thank Brady and the whole finance staff for just such a clear and excellent way that they walk us through from September through November all the way through. It really is just a wonderfully professional and transparent way to put together a $50 million budget. So thank you for that.
Agreed.
And I mean, you know, I think the elephant in the room every time we have these discussions is addressing our declining enrollment and making sure we are best serving our community and also capturing as many of the students as we would potentially have within our community as well. And that's a major focus of the board. And I think you've done a really remarkable job of just sort of capturing those pieces for us as we navigate through, and a little more certainty as we're at the end, as we're kind of resolving all of our open contracts as well as we're kind of hitting the very tail end of this.
I think I want to thank you and appreciate that your estimates and assumptions that we make are fairly conservative, so we don't show up on the front page of the Pioneer Press. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Cool.
All right. With that, all in favor of approval of the 25 school year budget, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With that, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. All right, I said we had a lot of items for our business items tonight. Did not disappoint. A wealth of content there. Up next, I will turn to our board members for where they have seen a passion in some of the end of the year celebrations and all of those pieces. I will turn first to Kim Human.
All right. Well, I guess I have to say it was my first South St. Paul graduation that I got to be a part of, and it was amazing to be there. It was amazing to see the community. I loved hearing the speakers, especially the 2 student speakers, and the familiarity they have with the teachers in the building, that they can publicly joke with them even in that setting. It was just a really amazing opportunity. The CLC graduation was a little more intimate, but also just really exciting to see the families and community members there celebrating the successes of our kids. It was fabulous to be a part of that. So, thank you.
Excellent. Wendy Felton.
Yes, I too also want to say a huge congratulations to all of our graduate students, Community Learning Center and the secondary building. Always wonderful program. So happy and congratulate to them and their families. Looking forward to that. A few things that I'm looking forward to myself coming up this Friday, as we know, for Kaposia Days, as our school board will be in the parade. We are unit number 5, so we look forward to seeing everyone. Looking forward to giving out some treats and waving and thanking everyone for that. And also coming up at the end of July, the last weekend of July, our community theater presentation is doing the musical Prom. Looking forward to that. It should be wonderful. Definitely plan on being there. Looking forward to it a lot. And also, as I serve on the Education Foundation Committee, we are starting also in July to be planning our gala event, which we know is in November, which is a major fundraiser for the Educational Foundation. So that's going to be coming up in just a couple weeks. And then I also just want to wish everyone a happy 4th of July, which is next week. So have fun and be safe. Thank you.
Excellent. Ann Claflin.
Thank you. I loved that photo from graduation that was shown in the superintendent's update that was taken from the stage, because it showed the pride and excitement all those students have going forward to the next steps in their lives, and recognizing the achievements. There were sashes and cords and medals that students were wearing, as well as sashes that identified students' affinity with different groups. And you could even see in one of the students was wrapped in a quilt that was given to all of our Native American students. It was really just a wonderful ceremony, and you could tell that everyone was excited to celebrate with our students. And moving to the sort of other end of our educational spectrum, I have to commend our facilities department and Director Mark Fenton. Over the weekend, we got a few of us received a note from a neighbor who had gone to the Kaposia playground. The teeter-totter had teetered its last totter and busted out. And this morning, it had already been taken out of service. That sort of response to problems often goes unnoticed because we don't see the problems. And I have to thank Director Fenton for being able to respond so quickly to that. There were also many opportunities to meet with parents and other community members. The American Indian Parent Advisory Council invited us to join one of their meetings. We hosted the ice cream social for seniors and heard about just what an opportunity it is for our community members to use the swimming pool facilities in Central Square, and what a draw that is. And the buildings task force continues to meet, and at our last meeting, we had really great discussions from a really broad cross-section of our community about how to best use what funds we have available to us, as you heard in that long-term finance, or long-term LTFM, long-term facilities management plan. It's very difficult to prioritize all of the decisions that a school board has to make about those budgetary items. And it's interesting to hear what the community thinks about these debates that we go through as well. Lots of opportunities for our school district to shine.
Excellent. All right. Monica Weber.
Similar to everyone else, I also was able to attend both the CLC graduation, which is a wonderful ceremony that we have in the high school auditorium. It's very intimate, and you can really see the accomplishment in the eyes of all the families and the students, that they really have achieved something that I'm sure at some point during their educational journey they didn't think they would be able to achieve. So the fact that they were able to walk across that stage and get that diploma is just always a very motivating ceremony to be able to attend. The weather for the high school ceremony was fantastic. It was not 100 degrees, and it was not raining, which are two things that we haven't had a lot of this summer. So I was joking with someone the other day that we got graduation and the rest of June is going to rain, and pretty much that has been how the rest of June is going to go. And so was just very excited. It is a very moving ceremony, and would just encourage anyone in the community to come to graduation next year, because it really is a sight to be seen, to see all the students kind of process down and walk onto the hill and onto the newly manicured grass and everything. It's just an amazing time. And also, the student speakers were fantastic. The featured teacher speaker, I thought, was great, and just how this really was a class that were freshmen during 2020, and so they really got to see the full cycle of being freshmen, doing online learning, and then all the kind of fits and restarts that happened, as we went forward. And they're here, and they're resilient, to quote one of our shared values. And so very excited for them to go off on their own journey, wherever that may take them.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, if you said it's going to rain for the rest of June, I am hoping for no rain at the parade. I remember walking very wet last year. So I look forward to seeing our community showing out for support for Composure Days. With no further items on our agenda, I am looking to adjourn the June 24th, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
A second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That the motion carries, and the meeting is adjourned at 7:13. Thank you.